Swami Vivekananda say about grief. So I'll start, as usual, with my opening chant. Om Tadekam smaramas hajamaha Tadekam jagat sakshirupam namamaha Sadekam nidhanam niralambamisham bhavam bodhipotam Sharanyam Rajamaha. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om. On that alone do we meditate. That alone do we worship. To that alone, the witness of the universe, do we bow. To that one who is our sole eternal support, the self-existent Lord, the raft to safety across the ocean of this world, do we come for refuge. Om, peace, peace, peace. So let's start with Bhagavad Gita. And as you know, Arjuna is on the battlefield with Sri Krishna, and the two armies are facing each other, and a tremendous battle is about to commence. And what does Arjuna say? He asks Krishna, his charioteer, "Oh Krishna, let's go see, who are we fighting? Take my chariot to the battleground so I can see who is lined up against us to fight. Who are these wretches who are lined up to fight against us?" And so Sri Krishna takes him and says, "See, Arjuna, behold, here they are, all your relatives." And Arjuna sees all these relatives of his, these close people, his teacher even, who are all standing to fight on the opposing side. And suddenly he is overwhelmed with grief. And that is why the first chapter is called Arjuna Vishada Yoga. That there is somehow in this grief there must be a yoga also. But this tremendous grief, he realizes that he has to kill his own family members. How can he do it? How is this possible? So he tells Sri Krishna, "At the sight of these my kinsmen, assembled here, eager to give battle, my limbs fail, and my mouth is parched. My body is shaken, and my hair stands on end. The bow, Gandiva, even his bow has a name, no? The bow, Gandiva, slips from my hand, and my skin is on fire. I cannot hold myself steady. My mind seems to whirl. O Keshava, I see omens of evil." And then he goes so far as to say, it would be better if the sons of Dhritarashtra, weapons in hand, should slay me in the battle, unarmed and unresisting. And then Sanjaya, the narrator, he says, Arjuna, having said these words on the battlefield, cast aside his bow and arrow and sank down on the chariot seat, his mind overcome with grief. So sometimes life deals us a certain hand, as it were, brings us certain experiences when we also get overwhelmed with grief, the tremendous sadness of everything. And we become beside ourselves. We're unable to function. It's a perfect description. Our mouth dries up, we are weak, we fall to the ground, we begin to, we weep, we can't even speak. Anyone who has grieved deeply knows this experience. We become incoherent with grief. So how is this a yoga? Interestingly, Sri Krishna's first, he's a prince, he's a warrior. It doesn't fit him at all, but he can't see straight, he can't think straight. And finally, he realizes this. He realizes this much, that he can't think straight. And so he tells Sri Krishna, "With my nature overpowered by weak commiseration, with a mind in confusion about duty, I pray to you. Tell me what is good for me. Tell me what is definitely what is good for me. I am your disciple. Instruct me who have taken refuge in you. So this is a turning point for Arjuna. When he realizes he's overwhelmed with grief, he can't think straight, and what does he do? He takes refuge in God. He takes refuge in Sri Krishna. And then Sri Krishna begins the true teachings of the Gita, the immortal and unforgettable verses on the immortality of the soul, of who we truly are. So this is a first hint on the yoga of grief, that grief, if we can let it turn us towards the divine, then perhaps it starts to become something like a yoga. So Sri Krishna's response now, it's very famous and perhaps often misunderstood as well. Because what he tells Arjuna, first of all, don't grieve. He says, I'll chant these verses, they're so beautiful. Ashocyanam lashocasvam prajñavadanscha bhashase gatasun agatasuncha namushocanti pandita. You have been mourning for them who should not be mourned for. Yet you're speaking words of apparent wisdom, but the subtext is actually not. The truly wise grieve neither for the living nor for the dead. And then, of course, he goes on to give these teachings on the immortality of the self. It is only bodies which die. The self is immortal. We cast off bodies as we throw off old clothing and all of that. So, when someone beloved, someone close to us, dies, what is that pain? What is that tremendous pain we feel? Is it that feeling of separation, that that person who was close is now gone forever? We won't see them again. We are plagued by those sweet memories of our association over many years and decades even, sweet memories which will never be repeated. Krishna is saying here, they're not gone. They have only passed beyond the horizon of our perception. We may not be able to perceive them, but they haven't gone anywhere. So don't grieve. So many beautiful, powerful verses reminding us that who we are cannot be destroyed, cannot die. I'll chant just a couple more of these verses. Vasamsi jirnani yatha vihaya navani grihnati naroparani tatha sharirani vihaya jirnani anyani sanyati navani dehi nainam chindanti shastrani nainam dahati pavakaha nachainam Pledayantyapo nashoshayati marutaha achedyoyam adahyoyam akledyo shoshya evacha nitya sarvagatasthanu achaloyam sanatanaha. Even as a person casts off worn out clothes and puts on others that are new, so the embodied self casts off worn out bodies and puts on others that are new. Weapons hunted millions of people. They express one of the foundational principles of our Vedanta tradition, that who we are is indestructible. We are not bodies, we are not minds, we are the self, infinite and perfect and ever free, ever blissful. But what about that first verse? The wise grieve neither for the living nor for the dead. How does that teaching play out in the lives of our spiritual heroes? Sri Ramakrishna. He grieved deeply at the deaths of close relatives, friends, and disciples. His nephew Akshay, he grieved tremendously. It was a tremendous pain he felt. Keshav Sen, he was spent 3 days in bed, paralyzed. Adhar Sen, he wept for a long time before the image of Divine Light. Holy Mother grieved so deeply at the deaths of the disciples of Sri Ramakrishna and of her own known people, Sister Nivedita. She grieved deeply. Swami Vivekananda, he grieved deeply. When Goodwin, his stenographer, died an untimely death, how much he grieved. He had to leave the place where he heard the news. He heard the news in Almora, and after that he couldn't bear to be in Almora anymore. And all the brother disciples of Swami Vivekananda, after Vivekananda himself stepped off the stage on July 4, 1902, they grieved, and they grieved for a long time. One Swami who came to, someone who came to join the order in, I think it was 1909, and he describes how there still seemed to hang over the mutt this kind of pall of grief that their leader, their shining sun, Vivekananda, had died. And in the Mahabharata, it is said even Krishna, he grieved the death of his nephew and Arjuna's son, Abhimanyu. So what do we make then of this teaching? First, he says, do not grieve, and yet these great souls, these realized souls, these avatars, they grieved deeply. So there's a danger if we read these verses, do not grieve, of doing what's called, it's a kind of a modern term, spiritual bypassing. Have you heard the term? For those of you who haven't heard it, it means using spiritual teaching to bypass what actually you need to address. No, I shouldn't grieve, so I'm not grieving. So we push it down, we ignore it. We pretend like there's no grief because we shouldn't. We are spiritual people. And Sri Krishna says, don't grieve, and I'm not grieving. The death itself is immortal. Ignoring the fact that we are human beings too. And it's a human experience to grieve. Now remember, Sri Krishna is telling Arjuna on the moments before the battle is to begin. There's a time for grief, and it's not when you're about to fight a war. You can't be grieving now. Shake it off and do your duty. So that is part of the teaching. There's a woman I met just recently, also grieve. And there's ignore this fact, or to pretend that it is not so. Ignore this fact, or to pretend that it is not so, is to put on emotional blinkers, which leave us unprepared for the losses that will inevitably occur in our own lives, and unprepared to help others cope with losses in theirs. So it's a beautiful idea that grief is actually a normal part of life. It's the price we pay for love. If we are to love, then we are going to grieve. Any dog owner knows this. Dogs are short-lived. We love them so much, and then they die. And then we grieve. We grieve our dogs. This is probably the most compelling grief, is the grief at the death of a loved one. But we grieve for many other reasons as well. There's involving some kind of loss. We might grieve the loss of a relationship, or perhaps a divorce, or a breakup, a heartbreak. We might grieve the loss of a job. We might grieve the loss of our physical health. We might grieve a lost opportunity. Or we might grieve a lost childhood, which was perhaps lost due to childhood trauma. We could grieve one's own life. I've seen this. Someone at the end of their life feeling like their life was not well lived, like they didn't lead their life well, and grieving that. Then there's anticipatory grief. Say someone has been diagnosed with a terminal illness. They're still here, but maybe we begin to grieve knowing that they are going to leave soon. Or grief at an impending retirement. There's also something called ambiguous grief, which is, for instance, someone who is present yet absent, maybe psychologically distant for whatever reason. They start withdrawing psychologically. So they're still here, and yet they're not here. Or maybe they're having some dementia, And so they start to be not here even though they're here. And also someone absent yet present. This is perfectly demonstrated in soldiers missing in action in war. And they're missing in action and the family doesn't know. Are they captured? Did they die? Are they somehow still somewhere? But their body hasn't been found. Maybe they're still alive, and on rare occasions they are, but oftentimes they're not. But so we don't know. This is kind of very hard to, because there's no closure. You don't know. You're left wondering and grieving and grieving. And then there's an interesting point. There's socially unrecognized grief. And one of these actually is the death of a pet. Well, it's just a dog. Why be so sad? Just a cat, right? Why should you be sad? This is socially unrecognized, but it's very real. People they love their pets. Or the death of an ex-spouse. This also happens. One is married, then divorces, maybe remarries, and then one's former spouse dies. That love doesn't completely go away oftentimes. So they grieve, but you don't want to admit to your new spouse that you're grieving your old spouse, right? So socially unacceptable, as it were. Even miscarriages or abortions, people deeply grieve these, but you're not supposed to. Well, why should you grieve? You wanted to kill the child, what would you, the baby, why are you grieving? But so it's complicated. So grief is a part of life. So first of all, accepting this inevitability of grief is a small step forward when grieving. That everybody grieves. It's a normal human emotion. And he came running to Sri Ramakrishna immediately after the cremation. So his son has been cremated, and as you know, in India, it goes very fast. If you die in the morning, by the evening, the cremation's all over. There's no, here in America, partly because of the laws of getting the death certificate and all these things, it takes a few days, and you also have a few days to process. But in India, cremation, gone, okay, cremation, time to cremate. So he comes running to Sri Ramakrishna's room at Dakshineshwar right after the cremation. And of course, everyone can see something is wrong. He looks bedraggled, his clothes are messy, he's just overcome with grief, and he sinks down into the corner. And at first, Sri Ramakrishna ignores him. And other people are trying to console him with words, oh, how sad, we're so sorry, death is inevitable, all these kind of things. But no, of course, it doesn't help. And then Sri Ramakrishna goes into ecstasy. And he sings a song. And he stands up and he slaps his left shoulder with his right hand like the wrestlers do. And he sings this song full of power. Powerful song. It says, to arms, O soul, death, behold, death storms your house in battle array. Mount the chariot of holy merit. Yoke to it the two steeds of worship and spiritual practice. Draw the bow of knowledge and set upon it the arrow of devotion, aimed at the supreme. But listen, there is yet a surer strategy. No chariot or charioteer are needed to vanquish every foe, if Dasrati takes his stand for battle on the sacred bank of the Ganga, the river Ganges. So there's a lot in this song. Dasrati, of course, is the singer of the song. And so let me just sing that first line and give a sense of the power of this song. It's of course in Bengali, but it's a song that Sri Ramakrishna would have sung maybe something like this. Jiva saja samare, Jiva saja samare. To arms, O soul, to arms. Prepare yourself for battle, because death is coming. Death has entered your home. And in this song, all are lifted up. Everyone in the room feels their hearts are elevated, their minds are elevated after this heavy grief that has entered the room. And then, after singing this song, which is kind of telling everyone, gird up your loins, death is inevitable, then he comes and gives genuine consolation to Mani Mohan. He comes and sits near him and says, ah, what burning pain is there on earth which can compare with the grief at the death of a son? A son is born of this sheath, isn't he? Referring to our bodies as sheaths. A son is born of this sheath, isn't he? So his relation with the body persists as long as it lasts. In fact, there's a separate term in Sanskrit and Bengali for that particular grief at the death of a child, putra shok. Putra shok, it's a term referring to this grief, which is perhaps the keenest grief that one can experience, and we all pray that we don't have to experience that grief of losing a child, but then it happens. It often happens. Then Sri Ramakrishna begins to describe his experience at Akshay's death, his nephew's death. What happened? He spoke in such a serious and solemn way, this is as recorded by Swami Mahayogananda, that it seemed as if you were experiencing it again. Very interesting. He says, Akshay died before my very eyes, and I felt nothing. How can it feel so much for a nephew? And if I feel so much pain, what agony must householders suffer? Is that what you are teaching me, mother? So this is Sri Ramakrishna's experience. At first, he went into ecstasy, seeing that death is an illusion, the soul leaves the body and is unaffected. But then, because he is a human being, just like all of us, he grieved intensely. He felt the pain. And this is how he could also offer genuine consolation. Because it is when we have also felt that pain that we can share that grief with someone else. So he shares Mani Mohan's grief. Grief shared is more bearable. And then, after a pause, he shifts his tone again. He says, but do you know, those who hold on to him, those who hold on to God, do not go down to the bottom on account of this unbearable grief. They regain their balance after but a few tossings. Persons of small capacity, like small vessels, lose their control, their balance altogether and go down. Have you noticed how small fishing boats behave when steamers pass through the Ganga? It looks as if they are lost and are gone. Some are capsized altogether. The bigger vessels, carrying tons of loads, they're heavier, they're more stable, get their balance after a few tossings. But a toss or two must be felt by all. If you visit Dakshineshwar and you know the river there are a lot of little boats also on the river, and then the big steamers come through, and the big steamer creates a big wake, which puts the boats into difficulty. The little boats, they are tossed in that wake. So Sri Ramakrishna is referring to that. It's like that. We will feel the tossing. If our boat is very small, it may even capsize. But if we hold on to God, if we have a big load on that boat so it's more steady, then we'll feel the tossings, but we won't capsize. The boat will be all right. So this is a wonderful teaching, Sri Ramakrishna's teaching on how to handle intense grief. Then he pauses again, and then he drives home the truth of impermanence. How few are the days during which relationship exists among all these. In this world, desiring happiness, people enter the world, they marry, have children, the children grow, they marry them off. Thus a few days pass by pleasantly. Then one gets ill, another dies, still another goes astray, and the parents are beside themselves with worries and anxieties. The more the frustrations, the louder the lamentation. And he gives a somewhat humorous example of a log of wood in the sweet maker's oven. Oven means the kind of stove that is used in India with just some bricks, made of clay bricks and then built up with a little extra clay, and then you stick the end of a log in the fire, and that goes on burning and cooking the sweets, whatever the sweet makers are making. And Sri Ramakrishna says, if you put a damp log in there, it burns well at first. Then as it gets burnt, the sap begins to ooze out through its back part and assumes the form of froth, which bubbles and bursts and produces various kinds of hissing sounds. It is just like that. So that fire of grief pushes this. You get all this sounds of lamentation. So he's reminding everybody and Mani Mohan that this is the way of all things and all persons. So Mani Mohan, after all these teachings, he breathes a sigh of relief, and he told Sri Ramakrishna, I knew that only you could have helped me at all with this tremendous grief I had felt. But it's interesting how Sri Ramakrishna moves through 4 stages here. And fascinating, it happens again. 4 teachings, holy name. A tremendous power. It helps us taste the reality of the divine. And the more we can experience the divine directly, the less our fear. The sting of grief is taken off. And then second, surrender to God. Give your power of attorney to God. Take refuge in the divine. Then third, he says, isn't your grief for your son only natural? The son is one's own self reborn. A reminder that it's okay to grieve. It's natural to grieve. Yes, we will grieve. And then finally, again, the teachings on transitoriness. House, wife, and children are all transitory. They have only a momentary existence. The palm tree alone is real. 1 or 2 fruits have dropped off. Why lament? So these steps Sri Ramakrishna gives us. Be ready for death. All must die. Fight death with the weapon of the holy name of God. Second, surrender to God. Take refuge in God. Depend on God. Hold on to God. Hold on to the divine. In whatever form that appeals to us, whether we think of God as Krishna, or as Allah, or as Jesus, or as Hashem, or any name or form or formless aspect of the divine. But do it. Hold on to God. Think of God. Take refuge there. Reminding us it is natural to grieve. And yet also remembering that death is inevitable. Everything in this world changes and comes to an end. And there's a very interesting passage after this. He takes Adha aside. Sri Ramakrishna takes Adha Sen aside, and he gives him some instruction. He says, you are a deputy magistrate, which is a big post, earning a very big salary. You are a deputy magistrate. Remember that you have obtained your position through the grace of God. Do not forget him, but remember that all must one day walk down the same path. Sri Ramakrishna probably knew, if not clearly, at least intuitively, that Adha was not long for this world. 18 months later, he died prematurely. He fell off a horse and succumbed to his injuries. Sri Ramakrishna had also told him, don't ride horses anymore. But he disobeyed his guru. And so he died. And so at the news of his death, Sri Ramakrishna wept before the Divine Mother for a long time. So Sri Ramakrishna had tremendous love for the devotees, and he wept when they would die prematurely, absolutely. And he also gives him this instruction on the holy name. He says, there is great power in the seed of God's name. It destroys ignorance. A seed is tender and the sprout soft. Still, it pierces the hard ground. The ground breaks and makes way for the sprout. I remember when I joined our monastery in Trabuco Canyon in Orange County, every year we would have to mow the road, mow the sides of the road where the brush grows thick, and then afterwards we have to keep it trimmed down for fire protection. And we'll see that in places the road is getting pushed, the road itself is cracking and getting pushed up by a little sprout coming up. So a sprout is so tender and small, and yet it has the power to break asphalt road. So Sri Ramakrishna is likening the power of God's name to this, like a very tender seed, yet with tremendous power in it. So let's talk a little more about how we can spiritualize our grief, how we can help use it in our spiritual life. At our memorial service that we read in Hollywood, which was, is it real? When Sri Ramakrishna left the body, Holy Mother was consumed with intense grief and weeping and weeping. Then, after a day or two, Sri Ramakrishna appeared to her and spoke to her and said, "Why are you weeping so much? I've just gone to the next room. I'm just here. Have I gone to some other place? I'm here. I've just passed from one room to another." Sri Ramakrishna used to suggest that we turn our strong emotions, our passions, whatever they may be, towards the divine, and thereby purify them. He would even say towards the divine, and thereby purify them. He would even say, if you are angry, be angry with God. Don't be angry with feeling of loss and separation. Now, the fundamental separation that we are experiencing, though it's an illusion ultimately, but we feel separate from each other and separate from God. Vedanta teaches us that we are not separate from one another. We are not separate from God. We are one with the divine. The divine is shining deep within all of us. And the closer we come to understanding that, to perceiving that, to realizing that, the more we become unified with that infinite divine reality and with everyone else. So can we turn our grief into a kind of grief at feeling separated from God? Can we transform our grief into longing for God? Grief is a kind of longing for the one who has died. If we're grieving a death, of course, can we turn that into longing for God? A longing for wholeness. When we touch the divine, we find we are fulfilled, we are complete, and we find everything and everyone there. Sri Ramakrishna, as you know, during his period of spiritual practice, his sadhana period, when he was practicing intense spiritual disciplines, intense prayer to Divine Mother, he would weep. It was a kind of grief. He would lie he had an initial vision of Divine Mother, where he was transported into an ocean of infinite light of consciousness and bliss. And that was the fruit of a certain period of intense striving and prayer. But then that vision subsided, and again he was not aware of the presence of the Mother. So he practiced intense. It wasn't a practice. He was overcome with intense longing to re-experience the Mother, and he began to weep, and he would lie on the ground, rubbing his face in the soil with grief, crying, "Ma, Ma, Ma." People thought he had lost his mother, his earthly mother. He had lost his mother temporarily, and it was his Divine Mother he had lost. This kind of weeping, it's a tremendous blessing to be able to weep for God. Through that kind of tremendous yearning, that weeping for God, the divine response also comes. Sri Ramakrishna guaranteed anyone who can weep for God for 3 days will definitely see God. God will come and reveal himself, herself to that person. But to weep for God for 3 days is not a small matter. So if we can weep for a beloved family member who has left, can we feel that beloved family member is with God, is with the divine, is with our beloved Ramakrishna, or our beloved Durga, or our beloved Jesus. And then our longing for our beloved also becomes longing for God. I'd like to turn to the letters of Swami Vivekananda. It's a tremendous letter written to Mrs. Bull, Sarah Bull, on the occasion of the death of her father. And he used to call Mrs. Bull, Sarah Bull, as Dhira Mata, the steady mother. This was his name he gave her, Sanskrit name, Dhira Mata. And so he writes, I had a premonition of your father's giving up the old body, and it being not my custom to write to anyone when a wave of would-be inharmonious Maya strikes anyone. But these are the great turning points in life, and I know that you are unmoved. Swamiji recognized her deep spirituality, and he relied on her wisdom and counsel for many of his pursuits, like organizing the Vedanta Society, organizing the Ramakrishna mission in India even. He relied on her counseling also for those things. Then he says, the surface of the sea rises and sinks alternately, but to the observant soul, the child of light, each sinking reveals more and more of the depth and the pearl and coral beds at the bottom. Coming and going is a pure piece of delusion, where that the soul never comes or goes. When is the time point that the soul is the Atman, the infinite self, infinite and unlimited, pure consciousness, beyond space and time. It is not that the soul is in space, it is that space is in the soul, in the self. It is not that time is, that we are in time, our true self. Time is actually in us. That's why Swami Vivekananda, when he was in Alameda, and Mr. Allen approached him and said, so Swamiji, I see you are in Alameda now. He had come over from San Francisco. I see you are in Alameda. And Swamiji answered gravely, no, Mr. Allen, I am not in Alameda. Alameda is in me. You know the quote, famous quote, but it shows where Swamiji's mind was. He was identified not with his body, but with his true self, the Atman, which is the true self of all. So Swamiji goes on. The earth is moving, giving the delusion of the movement of the sun. But the sun does not move. At least relative to the earth, the sun doesn't move. The sun moves relative to the center of the galaxy, of course. But the sun, we think that the sun is moving, but it's the earth that moves. So, he says, in the same way, so Prakriti, nature, or Maya, is moving, changing, unfolding veil after veil, turning over leaf after leaf with us. We are in, so it's a tremendous reminder, along the line language of Swami Vivekananda. He goes on, this beautiful closing passage. The real individuality, and he suggests that religion may have begun when people started seeking for some of those stars that had gone beyond our horizon. In other words, some of our loved ones had left the body, had left us, and we begin to search for them. That could be one start of where religion started, seeking for those who have passed beyond our immediate perception, and religion ends in finding them all. Finding all those souls, finding all souls in God and ourselves in the same place. Attaining that union. Now the whole secret is that your father has given up the old dress he was wearing, and he is standing where he was through all eternity. Will he manifest another dress in this or any other world? I sincerely pray that he will not, until he does it fully conscious. I pray that none may be dragged anywhere by the unseen power of their own actions. I pray that all may be free, that is, may know that they are free. And if they are to dream again, let us pray that their dreams be all of peace and bliss. So Swamiji closes this beautiful letter with a prayer that let people not be born unless they come to this world fully conscious and ready to serve and ready to help, so they won't suffer so much, because this world is such a difficult place to be. May all be free. That is, may they know they are free. We are all free already, only we don't know it. May they know they are free, and how touching. If they are to dream again, if we are to dream again, let our dreams be of peace and bliss. So, Swami Vivekananda has a number of letters of consolation written to different people. We don't have time really to read all of them. It's worth a study. If you want, I can send you, ask me, we can put it in the WhatsApp or put it in the email or something. Let me read just a couple of lines to one very touching letter that Swami Vivekananda wrote to someone named Balaji. I think it's Nanjunda Rao, was it? Or I can't remember who is Balaji just now. So he is writing, he had lost his son. And he quotes from the Bible, from the book of Job. Naked we came out of our mother's womb, and naked we return. Blessed be the name of the Lord. Thus said the old Jewish saint when suffering the greatest calamities that can befall to man. And he erred not. He's also going to take this same approach here that Sri Ramakrishna took, of surrender to God, surrender to the will of God. In practically all of his letters of consolation, except for the one to Mrs. Bull, he suggests this: thy will be done. Surrender, surrender, surrender. And then he goes here, this is amazing. Herein lies the whole secret of existence. Waves may roll over the surface, and tempest rage, but deep down there is the stratum of infinite calmness, infinite peace, and of infinite bliss. Quote, blessed are they that sorrow, for they shall be comforted. Quoting from the teaching of Jesus. He was in a mood. This is written from Bombay on 23rd May 1893, just before Swamiji went to America. Perhaps he was priming his mind for work in the West with studying the Bible, though he must have studied it much earlier also. But he says, blessed are they that sorrow, for they shall be comforted, quoting Jesus. And then he says, and why? Because it is during these moments of visitations, when the heart is wrung by hands which never stop for the father's cries or the mother's wail, when under the load of sorrow, dejection, and despair, the whole world seems to be nothing but an eerie and utter despair, all of a sudden, and intuitionally we come face to face with the grandest mystery in nature, existence. Yes, then, it is when the load would be sufficient to sink a lot of frail vessels. The man of genius, of strength, the hero, sees that infinite, absolute, ever blissful existence per se, that infinite being who is called and worshipped under different names in different climes. Then it is when for a time the shackles that bind it down to this hole of misery break, as it were, for a time. The unfettered soul rises and rises until it reaches the throne of the Lord, quoting, where the wicked cease to torment and the weary are at rest. So this is his teachings to Balaji on the death of his son. That when, all right, let the grief destroy us. Swamiji, speaking from his own experience, his father died, leaving his family in poverty, and he could find no way out, and it was tremendous, tremendous grief. And so he tells him, cease not, brother, to send up petitions day and night. Cease not to say day and night, thy will be done. So it's a very touching, moving letter also to Balaji, one of his disciples, on the death of his son. To turn to God, to let this grief take you down into the very pit of despair, and then sink even deeper until you find that stratum of peace, of light, of bliss. It is there. can I share a little more from the letter to Mary Hale, just because I haven't been speaking quite an hour yet. Hope you're not getting too sleepy. This is beautiful, written to Mary Hale on the death of her father. And Mary Hale and Swami Vivekananda, as you know, were very close. They had an intimate relationship of brother and sister, a perfectly pure, fraternal relationship. And they really treated each other as brother and sister, scolding each other, loving each other, kidding around with each other. And here it is that he writes, one interesting point he says is, one of the most curious cause of suffering when somebody goes off is the feeling that I was not good enough to that person. When my father died, it was a pang for months, and I had been so disobedient. You have been very dutiful. If you feel anything like that, it is only a form of sorrow. So this this final consolation is so touching, which only a great soul like Swami Vivekananda could give. He writes first, you have had shelter all your life. I was in the glare, burning and panting all the time. Now, for a moment, you have caught a glimpse of the other side. My life is made up of continuous blows like that, and 100 times worse, because of poverty, treachery, and my own foolishness. Pessimism, you will understand how it comes. Well, well, what shall I say to you, Mary? You know all the talks. Only I say this, and it is true. If it were possible to exchange grief, and I had a cheerful mind, I would exchange mine for your grief ever and always. Mother knows best, your ever faithful brother Vivekananda. I'm always very touched, very moved by this expression that if I had a cheerful mind, if it was possible to exchange grief and I had a cheerful mind, I would exchange my cheerful mind for your grief. What a way to express that deep love that he had for his dear sister. So it must have gone a long way to assuage her grief also. So in conclusion, we have touched on the very human, natural experience of grief. That we all face grief, that it is the price we pay. It will come to all that we love. It will come to some before it comes to us, and we will grieve. But be ready. Prepare ourselves to hold on to God at every time, now and in the hour of death of our loved ones and the hour of our own death. And reminding ourselves, yes, grief is natural. Let it turn us more towards God. And remember also that it must come to all. The great spiritual teachers' hearts are very tender with compassion. They can love the way we can't. We can't love the way Ramakrishna or Vivekananda can love. So they naturally felt that grief even more keenly. And so Sri Ramakrishna was paralyzed, literally paralyzed in bed for several days after Keshav's death. But after that, he went on with his teaching. He went on with his life, immersed ever in the joy of Divine Mother. So it wasn't that it held him back for years. He overcame it, as it were, after a few tossings, as he himself describes. But they feel that the pain, actually they feel the grief of all beings. Why Swami Vivekananda would pray, may no one be born here, dragged by the force of their unseen actions. So if they will grieve, we will surely grieve. It is they also who can offer the true consolation to us. They know that the divine is ever abiding in all hearts. Let us allow our grief to become a part of our yoga, our spiritual practice, part of our spiritual path. Let it ripen into a feeling of separation from God. Let it fuel our yearning for God. Let it help us long for God, and let it help us find God and find all souls there and ourselves in the same place. ma sadgamaya tamaso ma jyotirgamaya mrityurma mritangamaya. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. From the unreal, lead us to the real. From darkness, lead us unto light. From death, lead us to immortality. Om peace, peace, peace.
Song, Maharaj, your song.
Yeah, there'll be a closing song.
Some question, can we have some questions?
Questions?
Yes.
I think let's
Yes.
have a closing song.
Yes, Maharaj. Huh?
Guitar.
Maharaj, your song, guitar song.
I'll sing a closing song.
Yes.
And we decide on that. It's an
Yes.
English song.
Yes.
It's not a performance though. It's a group song. So you have to sing with me. It'll be call and response. Many of you know this song. It's "Remind Me, My Lord, Who I Am." So I'll sing it a line, and then you all have to sing after me. And then we ask the Lord to remind us who we truly are. This is a beautiful song. I learned it from Swami Nirvanananda Saraswati, who is an Italian Swami, a bearded Swami, who roams all over the world singing with his guitar. Now, he's a much better guitar player than I am, but I think you'll forgive me. I will sing it anyway. And it was originally written by a Sai Baba devotee. The Satya Sai Baba devotees, they sing this song, but Nirvanananda adapted it a little bit, changed it a little bit. He's translated it into many different languages, and that's the glory of kirtan. That everyone who sings it, it changes a little bit in each singer's hand. It's not like it's written down.
Chair?
I'm not sure. I think I try to stand, but let's see how this works. This kind of thing. Okay. Let's see. I have a guitar.